Mark from the Vegan Mooncat. In case you're watching me on anyone else's channel, and not the actual Vegan Mooncat on YouTube, Facebook, etc., it's we're doing a multi-stream. So this stream is going out over a few different channels, including Grumpy Vegan Grandad, Roger Yates, Level Joy, and obviously mine, the Vegan Mooncat. So that's why it seems a little bit peculiar. So what I'll do is I'll now just bring in a couple of our guests here today to discuss Mother's Day, but we're in relation to animals in animal agriculture. So let's bring on the first reprobate. It is Dan, and he's on the move.
I'm on the move. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking straight ahead. I'm driving safely. I'm obeying the speed limits, 80 miles an hour. And yeah, it was the last minute. I'm on a mission. It's a secret one again. I'm really sorry, but I've been driving for 4.5 hours now. But yeah, I've made it. I'm here through the wonders of the internet.
He's still here. He's still going. Got Mint Infinity there. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. That's from whose channel are you from, Mint Infinity? I don't think you're from mine, but let me know. All right, okay. I think they'll start coming through, Cherie. I would hope the comments will come through. All right, let's bring on let's just do it all at once. Let's bring on Level Joy, and we'll also bring on Roger Yates. Nice to see you here. Are you okay, guys?
Hello, everyone.
Are you all right? All right, Joy, can you hear us too?
Loud and clear.
All right. I'm just wondering why the comments on the side are only because there's more comments sort of on YouTube than there is on the comments down the side there on the on-screen chat. Not really sure why that is. Cherie, can you tell? Are they? Okay. Oh, yeah, no, I can see them now. Yeah, they're coming through. I think there's just a little bit of a delay on the comments coming through. So we've got The Real Thing watching, Leon, Mint Infinity, and a few others that will probably start showing up at any time now. Family 4 Explore, Michael Askew, and lots of others. So, guys, we're here today to discuss mothers on Mother's Day, but in relation to their treatment within animal agriculture. In other words, non-human mothers. There. So it will start off by introducing everyone. I think this is Grumpy Vegan Grandad. This is Joy from Level Joy, and Roger from Roger Yates. So do you want to give a brief introduction about yourselves? Obviously, anyone who's watching your own channels probably already knows you, but if you want to go, do you want to go, Grumpy?
Yes, so my name's Dan. I'm a vegan activist. I've got my own channel, Grumpy Vegan Grandad. For those of you who are on my channel, thanks for joining. I've got a mother who I've bought presents for today. And yes, I'm on here to chat about why mothers are abusing other mothers because they're not human. So that's basically the premise of me being here, is to ask why this is and why do people not see the connection.
That, and you're here for the eye candy as well.
Of course.
Joy?
Hi, yeah, I'm Level Joy, and basically what I do is I make content about veganism, this little niche topic. Maybe you've heard about it. I also make vegan music, and I talk a lot, especially about bees, because I'm fascinated by them, and I mostly talk about how honey is not vegan.
Ah, very good, very good. Roger? Do you want to introduce yourself to anyone who's not watching on your own channels?
Hi, everyone. So I've been vegan for 43 years now. So been around the block a couple of times. But I think it's an interesting subject, this, obviously, because it seems to me that speciesism is kind of built on the exploitation of female reproduction systems. So it's a
100%.
important kind of conversation.
Okay, then. So I think what I wanted to do is, and if it's okay with you guys, is initially talk about well, there's obviously many different mothers in the animal agriculture industry that are abused. There's many different species of animals that is sort of are taken advantage of. I thought we'd start off with one of the main ones, obviously, which is cows, which are obviously quite heavily used for different products such as dairy and obviously their flesh as well. So I didn't know. Sorry. So I think in case anyone's unaware, cows only produce milk when they're pregnant. So it's exactly the same as a human or any other mammal. They produce milk for their babies, and that's the primary reason for producing it. Now, obviously, the only way that they can produce milk is to get pregnant, and it's not really done very naturally, is it? It's done in a very horrific sort of forced way. Which is very, very unpleasant. I mean, they get put into things called, well, I don't know the official term. Roger, I don't know if you do or anyone else. I always call them rape racks, which is probably I don't know if it is the official term or not. I mean,
well, that's the term that farmers used, but don't want to be heard using anymore because of all this. But
right,
that was
okay.
what they used to call it, and that was coined by them. And now they're trying to shy away from that because they're being exposed.
Yeah, but if it's called an insemination device or insemination rack, that's the last time I saw
linked to that because it's also linked to giving injections and stuff like that, and medical treatments, and it's called a cow crush.
Right. So basically, anytime they want to restrain the animal from and keep it under their control for any procedure that they choose to do to it, they put it into basically what is like a large metal gate that closes around the head. I suppose it can be made of other materials as well, and it just keeps the animal completely still for anything that they choose to do to it against its will. I think that's the general where it all starts, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the reason. The reason they use it so much is because obviously it makes it easier for farmers to use when they're trying to artificially inseminate mothers.
Indeed.
Or future mothers.
There's an interesting historical history to the term rape rack. It was first heard in a 1982 film called The Animals Film, which was kind of my generation's Earthlings, if you like, and it was shown in full on Channel 4, the entire film, and it was 2.5 hours long, in 82. And the narrator said, "Oh, the farmer joked, we call it the rape rack." And then I spoke to a dairy farmer who's now a vegan, Harold Brown. He's a kind of vegan expert now. And he said that they still use it, but very quietly. And so it was what Dan just said, that it's kind of a term that is kind of used, but they kind of keep it on the quiet because in 82, they didn't realize it would be an issue. Whereas now they're a bit more savvy. And so consequently, they don't use the term as much, at least not in public.
Mm. So I think it's very interesting. I mean that's obviously one of the type, a particular version of that device there, so that they can just restrain the cow. It doesn't look particularly comfortable, and I'm sure it's not. And then what happens after that is obviously not comfortable at all. Have you looked into that much yourself, Joy? About the actual insemination part of the abuse?
Yeah, actually, that's initially, veal is initially what got me to look into veganism or look into, where my food comes from to begin with. So that's actually mainly why I'm vegan, or at least the initial reason. It's just, people will go. Actually, today I saw a commercial made by the Dutch Dairy Association, I believe it was called. And it was this super romanticized video of cows just dillying in the field and having a good time and, talking about dairy and all of that. There was not a single calf in that footage. They did not show the rape racks in that video. They did not show any of the other insemination practices because I think all of them are bad in my personal opinion. It's just so misleading, and that's it made me feel really dumb to find out how exactly it went into work, and that it wasn't this romanticized beautiful image. It's just a horrifying practice.
Yeah, I mean,
just showing the picture.
Just showing it there. Yeah, people have got this idyllic image, I think, of some cow, female cow, a cow out in the field, and a bull coming along. A bit of Barry White comes on in the field. They have a great time, and everything's all idyllic in this little ideal world. But no, they get put into a metal rack, and then they get absolute freaks like these people. I'm sorry, I've got no sympathy, for I can't be polite about it. Who literally fisting the cows, the mothers, in the insemination process. I don't. Why are they smiling on? This picture amazed me. Why would anyone smile at this point? It's just insane. But so
it's a romanticization, and I think that especially in the dairy industry, you see this, but pretty much everywhere in animal agriculture, I think the bar for welfare standards or for what we consider to be good to the animals is just absolutely on the floor. It's like if I were to go out and say, hey, I walk my dog every day and I feed them every day. Why aren't you subsidizing me and just absolutely kissing my feet for it? You should be taking good care of the animals that you're responsible for, and that does not in any way, shape, or form justify the harm that is done to them.
No, exactly. You got any views on that one particularly, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, we laugh when you say the Barry White thing, and I mean, even if they did things in the natural way, it's not right. It's because I look through nature to how animals behave in nature, and animals have the chance to get away. They're not in enclosed areas, they're not. It's even if it was supposedly in a natural environment, it's not natural while there's fences around animals.
No.
Full stop, so you're never going to get a natural environment. And yeah, the whole industry, I mean, the thing about dairy is it's the most torturous one because it goes on for the longest amount of time. I mean, I'm not saying it's any better for animals that get killed quicker, but to go through 7 years of torture and heartache and then be murdered, it just makes it all the more gruesome.
Yeah, it's like the dairy cow gets the worst of the lot, doesn't it? Really,
It's
all. But to then go like a full 6-7 years of being continually having your reproductive system hijacked for profit, constantly having your babies taken away from you, constantly having your head put in a rack. It's just horrific. And obviously, I mean, they carry their babies for a long period of time as well. I think it's about 9 months, the same as a human.
Exactly the same as a human, and that's what's more disgusting about it, is that it's a 9-month period. And you do develop a natural bond. Not all cows do. Not all humans develop a natural bond.
Exactly.
Some women have postnatal depression. Some people can't connect with the young. But 99% of the time, every single mammal will connect with that. It's a genetic thing. It's in our DNA to bring up the new generation. It's a natural bond, and we can't shy away from that. And anybody who says an animal doesn't feel love for their offspring, no matter what the species, are talking through the anus. And that's putting it nicely.
That's a very good point you make about the whole natural. I hear the term natural all the time to justify a lot of the cruelties that we commit. First off, I don't think it's natural, but even if it was, how things being natural doesn't mean it's morally justified.
No, I mean that's it, isn't it? I mean, yeah, everyone always calls to nature like that's where we should be looking for a sort of moral compass, and I'm not always sure that should be the case. But yeah, I mean they've got 9 months of, and that's it. The body's prepared for something. It's waiting. It's had 9 months of pregnancy of the cow. It's it's expecting its calf. It knows what's coming. They're not stupid animals. They know that they've got all those motherly instincts, the same as any other mammal who's going to give birth and look after its child. And then obviously I think they're supposed to sort of naturally drink from the mothers for about 10 or 11 months, is it, or somewhere around there? That sounds about right, I think. But obviously they don't want the calf feeding from the mother, for that length of time, because they want to feed off the teat themselves. Basically, they want to steal all that milk, so they take the calf away. I mean, I think we're all pretty much aware what happens if you were to take a baby away from a human mother. I mean, that's just horrific. Obviously, people just think, "Oh my God, you can't do that. That's terrible." The mother would be in a terrible state of, and she'd be, she'd be so distraught at the absence of the child. But they just don't consider the fact that the cow's going to have those exact same feelings, and they're going to miss their child just as much. I mean, what's your thoughts, Roger?
Well, a few things were brought up in the last 5 minutes, and so going back to the Barry White thing, there is a film that the VIP did, Vegan Information Project, that way. It's called Animal Exploitation in Ireland. It's on YouTube, and it starts off with artificial insemination, and there's a really large artificial insemination plant in Meath in Ireland, and they actually use Barry White music in the program. You know,
really? No way. I know. I said it to add some sort of lightness to an otherwise horrific situation, which you know, for good or bad, maybe I shouldn't have. But I really didn't think that was an actual thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've also, I mean, at this artificial insemination plant, they've got a clock which has got a bull having sex with a cow, you know, so it's moving like this. So it's really kind of juvenile and childish. Another couple of things on the crush. Going back to the crush thing. It's not always called the rape rack, and the reason for that is because a crush is used for a lot of other things as well.
Yeah,
and so we've got to take that into account, you know. So so that's important. And there was something else,
you know, for any vaccinations, or
I'll come back to that.
I'll take it. And obviously, we were talking about mothers and in the animal industry, but I assume that they would put would they restrain bulls in there, you know, to take semen from them?
They do restrain bulls in artificial insemination. In fact, they're called teaser bulls. So,
right, okay.
And this goes back to the point I was going to make, which is the fact that we have to accept that from the farmer's point of view, artificial insemination is a welfare measure. And the reason for that, and the reason why they use teaser bulls, is the fact that the bulls now are so heavy that they can't mount a female, you know, a cow. And the reason for that is that they would break her hips. And so they use these teaser bulls, and so they chain another bull to the wall, and then they get one bull to mount the other. And then the guy moves in with the artificial vagina. And so for them, it's a welfare measure, because otherwise the cows would be severely injured. But the thing is, it's a welfare measure based on a problem that they have created.
Exactly, yeah.
In the same way as, you know, debeaking is a welfare measure, they think, because of a problem that they've created, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I also imagine it's a efficiency thing, because, you know, just purely practically speaking, to bring a cow and like move them onto the next bull or next female cow, that seems like a lot of work compared to.
Post comment.
Yeah, well, their ideal situation would be to be able to sex the semen, and so they know the offspring that they're getting, because that would be the most efficient thing. And it is true. I mean, in Ireland, they used to call artificial insemination the bull in the bottle. And it was to move it away from just the chance kind of thing of leaving a bull in the field kind of thing. So it's a much more efficient way of doing it.
And there's also, if you don't mind me moving on to that, the matter of the what you brought up, the breeding practices, not only of the bulls, but especially of the cows. If you look at how much milk a cow produced 10 years ago versus now, the difference is absolutely massive. And, you know, you see the footage sometimes of these cows being brought to the milker with these massive udders.
Absolutely huge, aren't they now? Yeah, absolutely crippling.
I mean, I'm a woman, and you know,
the thing is as well, though. The thing is as well that they inject them with estrogen as well to put more estrogen into the cow's body, so they do produce more milk. And they also, as I saw on that farm, that they inject them with calcium, because obviously they're losing a lot of calcium as well. So they're having calcium injections. You know, I mean, the bull semen industry now. Joey Carbstrong did a video, and he called it white gold, because they've got these massive locked up high security places now with bull semen in. And this is how far this sick industry has got now, that we've now got a commodity that is semen that is worth an absolute fortune. It's just, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening.
No,
yeah, dairy's big business. Yeah.
No,
especially in the Netherlands. Like, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but I imagine the same.
Yeah, but it's absolutely amazing the level of. I don't particularly blame people for this level of ignorance, because obviously it's not really broadcast, because you know, it's only within recent years through animal activists putting this out in the public domain that all these practices and stuff are a lot more well known, isn't it? They've tried to hide it for as long as possible, basically. I mean, I know a vast majority of people I know didn't even know that cows only produce milk when they're pregnant. I actually have, I mean, you guys have probably heard it too. It's like, well, what are they going to do? They'll only get ill if they can't get rid of all that milk. I mean, it just keeps coming, you know, for like they just leak milk for no reason.
They give milk for life, but the point is, this is ignorance about basic mammalian biology, which is
exactly.
But you know, on the basis of ignorance, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because of the fact that we're all vegan activists, and we kind of know this, that, and the other. You expect a lot of people to know things. We were talking this morning, funny enough, about the you know, the foot and mouth crisis that happened in Britain and in Ireland back in the 1990s. And a farmer came up to me at our stall a few years ago, and they were talking about how upset they are to see all the other animals being killed on their farm. And the reason for that is because they're used to either just seeing them being shipped away, or they themselves might drop them off at the gates, but they don't normally see the slaughter. And so I asked this farmer to describe what happened in the slaughterhouse, and he couldn't. So, you know, even at the farmer level, there's a lot of ignorance.
Definitely. I mean, do you think generally people realize that in sort of like the public domain now, do they realize that the calves are taken away so soon from their mothers, and do they realize the suffering that the mother has after that, and obviously the isolation that the calf has to suffer? Do you think anyone's, you know, apart from people who are obviously actively looking into this, you know, like vegans or people who are interested in farming practices, is anyone actually aware of this information? Because as a person before I was vegan, if I'd known half of this, I mean, you'd like to think that at that point you'd think, I really shouldn't be taking dairy.
I think on a level we sort of know, because we are mammals ourselves. You know, we learned probably a lot about this in school, but I don't think we make the connection very easily to how that is cruel, because I think it's very intrinsic to humans to, you know, not want to change. And learning about some information where you might be in the wrong, or where you might be participating in something that you disagree with, is just very difficult to process. That's just in human nature. So I think that that's the main bump in the road that, you know, caused me to not be vegan for so long.
But there's also the issue of denial as well. And there's, you know, I mean, in some of my talks, I talk about the denial situation. And human beings, unfortunately, are really good at denial. And so you've got a situation where I used to ask, I don't really know, I don't think it's a sexist issue, but it could be. But I used to say, well, in terms of being ignorant of mammalian biology, even women are. And this is because of the disconnect, because we don't see ourselves as animals, and we don't see ourselves as mammals, and we don't see ourselves as apes. You know, we've got this special category, human being. But women ultimately will know that they would have to be pregnant in order to lactate, but they don't transfer that knowledge to cows.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that is. I'm not particularly sure that is willful ignorance or just a lack of education on basic biology, you know, of animals. Really, I mean, I know we say the term willful ignorance at all, but I mean, I don't think my wife particularly knew. Did you, Sheree? You know, I don't think. Yeah, my wife didn't. You know, she's had children, but she did not put the connection there that they would you'd have to impregnate a cow, make it pregnant for it to produce milk. It just didn't occur. And, you know, it's just never thought of. Maybe like you're purposefully not trying to think about it. I don't know, but you know, it's just a thought that never comes into most people's heads at all. Which is, and it's something that I believe that should definitely be taught in schools and educational establishments. I mean, if people think it's okay to take advantage of a female's reproductive system and steal their children and their milk and everything else, they should at least well, they should know what it is and then stop. They should know what's occurring. Yeah, Ronnie's just saying I've been using the word "it" instead of "her." It occurs, you know. I don't mean to do it. I know I'm wrong when I say it, but it's just even in me, and I've you know I've only been vegan over 5 years now, but you know still some of these terms and whatever, like "it" and whatever, slip into my vocabulary sometimes. Unfortunately, I'll keep working on getting rid of them though. Don't worry. I mean, I've got a clip here for anyone who doesn't know. I mean, cows, mother cows, when they can actually cry and bellow for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks for their children once they've been taken away from them, and then the child is completely separated and it's living in a small plastic hut with no warmth, no affection from its mother, you know, and it's absolutely terrible. I've got a small.
It's again.
No. When I say it's absolutely terrible, the procedures. I don't mean it as in.
You just said its mother.
The cat, her mother, or his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just terrible, isn't it? So, clip. I mean, it's just a short clip, nothing graphic, obviously. Well, it's pretty graphic in a different kind of way. Yeah, that is what dairy is doing to produce an unnecessary thing for humans to consume.
No, I was at an Earthlings in Dublin once, and there was 3 dairy farmers, all female dairy farmers were there, and they were talking to us. And one of them said that one of the things that really upset her was the fact that of the lowing, in other words, the calling of the cows for their calves. And I said, well, you can do something about that by not, you know, creating the calves for human exploitation. And but one interesting fact that came out of that conversation was, I said, is it worse, do you think? Because she was saying that some of the calves, they leave with the mother for about 3 or 4 months, and some they take away at birth. And I said, which is worse, as it were, in terms of this separation and the trauma of separation? And she said, interestingly, that it's easier if you separate them straight away, which ironically is what they used to do, you know, to those unfortunate women that used to have their babies taken away. They gave birth and then whoop, they're gone, you know, to give them no chance to bond with them.
Right.
Apart from the bonding that goes on in the womb, as Danny was saying before.
I read the exact same thing in a Campina article, the thing you're mentioning right now, the whole, we removed them only a few weeks because, you know, then the goodbye isn't that tough. I'm like, okay, you're trying to sell me a product and this is the best you can come up with. But sorry to interrupt, go on.
Well, no, a few weeks would be enough for the bond. I mean, if they do it straight away, it's not so bad. And also, of course, it feeds into... farmers often say that quite a lot of the cows are not good mothers. And that would feed into the fact that if you're being exploited and having your rights violated systematically, and every time you gave birth, your baby was taken away at some point, you're probably not going to be a good mother because it's almost bred out of you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what do they expect to happen at that point?
We had cows before we bred them to this point, so...
I mean, yeah, there's some other vile practices, isn't there? As well. I mean, the cows that are allowed to stay with their mothers. I mean, they want them. They don't get to feed on milk for a long period of time, though, do they? I mean, I've seen the devices that they attach through the calf's nose. So every time the calf tries to feed from its mum, it will hit it with spikes. And then the mother will end up kicking the calf away.
It's called a spike anti-suckler, that is.
Yeah, those things.
Oh, I mean, I saw one of those. I thought it was a made-up picture. I think, why would anyone possibly invent such a horrific thing?
Have you seen the plastic ones? I imagine you've probably seen the yellow plastic ones, right? Well, in Ireland, they sell these aluminium metal ones with these metal spikes. They're even worse than the plastic ones.
Okay. What are they called again?
Spiked anti-suckler device.
Spikes anti. If you guys want to talk, I'm going to see if I can get a picture of these disgusting things for anyone who's not sure what they are.
Yeah, it reminds me of that video that Joey Carpstrong, I believe, did. And he had a table in front of him with a bunch of these devices. And he asked the public, what do you think this is for? And one of those sucklers was included on it. And like, I believe a speculum created for cows specifically. And it's just, I mean, it's just painful to watch. Even the devices just look horrifying to me.
Yeah, the VIP for about 7 years now, we've had a big display called Tools of Injustice. And we have it, you know, the insemination rod and the big glove, you know, that you put on the hand and all that kind of stuff, and including the aluminium version of this, which is really honestly worse than that.
And it goes like in the nose, right? So that it goes in the nose and then in front of the mouth.
Yeah,
correct?
it goes in the calf's nose. So every time it tries to feed from its mum, basically it causes its mum distress and pain, and therefore the mother won't let the calf feed, and then they basically you know, can wean them prematurely from.
I mean, there's nothing more oppressive, really, when you think about it, than preventing a mother from feeding her offspring, and actually creating a situation where, because it's so painful, the mother will reject her children, essentially. I mean,
yeah, and that goes to back what you, and that goes back to what you were saying, that you got the farmers there saying that the cows aren't necessarily good mums, and yet every time the calves try to feed, they get pain. It's insane.
And it's also like I follow some sanctuaries on Instagram, which you definitely should do if you're a vegan. You trust me, you need that kind of content. But there's a lot of calves once they're adopted by a sanctuary that have that are immunocompromised because they did not get the adequate nutrients from feeding from their mother or from the farmer. That's also a huge issue because some of them are given the initial feed, the first feed, so they can survive long enough to become either veal or dairy cows themselves. But when they're not adequately given that, like, lots of cows suffer from nutritional issues. Is that something you recognize, Roger? Because that's something I heard from sanctuaries a lot.
Say again. Sorry, I was reading the comments. Can you say that again? Sorry.
Oh yeah, sure.
I've got a few comments which read
that a lot of calves that end up in sanctuaries suffer from are immunocompromised because of the nutrition and inadequate nutrition that they receive, because they either don't get to feed and they don't receive it otherwise from the farmer.
It's a mixed bag, I think, because one thing that separation does do is mean that the farmers are in control of the calf getting the right amount of colostrum, which is very important, you know. So it's a mixed bag. I think some will be, some won't be, depending on the experience. Because of course, you know, farmers are different from each other, and they go through different sense of being trained. So some are better than others, and so it's not completely the same across the board.
I mean, obviously, there are other animals other than just cows that are obviously abused in animal agriculture. And we should probably talk about some of the other beings which are tortured, including pigs, obviously. Now, obviously, the meat industry uses, or the animal flesh industry, as I think we like to call it, uses female pigs for their reproductive systems as well. They impregnate the mother. I've never liked using the word sow. I don't know why. It's even though it's a term that people use, obviously.
It's an industry term, isn't it?
Definitely, and obviously they breed the baby pigs, the piglets, for human consumption, which means that they need artificially inseminating as well, multiple times throughout their lives, keep forcing them to get pregnant over and over again, and obviously, you know, that's another example of. I mean, I don't know of the exact length of time that a mother pig will be constantly. I mean, I assume it's probably about the same amount of time. Is it 5, 6, 7 years until their reproductive systems are absolutely beyond, and then they'll send them off for maybe cheap meat out to different industries for pet foods and other such things.
Well, actually, it was pigs where the rape rat thing first came in.
Okay.
And it was the it was when the farmer was explaining to the people who made the animals film, they just had a lot of sows tied up in a barn, and they said that they allow the boar in who could take the sows at will, and they said, and the farmer joked, we call it the rape rack. So that's where that started. Going back to the film that I mentioned that the VIP made, there was there's a really weird thing that probably people have never seen, which is there's a scene of lots and lots of female pigs in a row in individual crates. And there's a guy sat on each one, right? And they are administering the semen. And they allowed the boar into the front of the situation. So the boar is walking up and down, as it were, stimulating the females. But it's human beings sat on them, they're actually sat straddled on them, facing backwards. I mean, it's a really weird thing, and I've never seen that footage except for in Ireland.
No, I've never seen that. That's
yeah, animal exploitation in Ireland. If you look for it in that, it's there, definitely there.
It's not. So we've got a picture here, for instance, of a female pig who spends her entire life in a very restrictive area. She can't even stand up. A lot of the time, she'll roll on her own young and crush them accidentally because there's no physical way of her getting out of the way. It's an absolutely abysmal existence. Again, prolonged for many, many years, and then eventually will just go off to be chopped up into pieces to go into a myriad of meat-based products. So it's, it's such a systemic, horrific amount of abuse of a female reproductive system. That it's just bewildering that people, are allowing this to occur. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was oblivious to it, or made myself oblivious to it for absolutely years. But once you know, obviously.
It's
Or
all
once
to do with efficiency again, though, Mark. I mean, if your job is to systematically violate the rights of other animals, then you find so-called efficient ways of doing it, and it's as simple as that. And that's what's going on there. In fact, they would say that those crates are designed to stop them rolling onto their children, although it doesn't happen all the time. And one of the reasons why they might not be great about that is the size of them. I mean, we're talking about pigs that have come from wild boar initially, which are quite small compared and quite agile. So you wouldn't have that mortality rate. So again, we've got a problem that we're trying to solve with violence, which we created.
Yeah. I mean, all these problems are 100%, caused by our animal abuse, and then we have to invent other ways to compensate or work around that. To maximize profits and make as much money as possible.
Is debeaking, isn't it? Classic case.
Yeah, I mean, debeaking is absolutely horrific as well. I mean, problems that we've caused. Joy, have you got anything that you'd want to say about this?
Yeah, it's always just so horrifying to see. It's these pigs, like they're really intelligent animals, right? And you just see these rows upon rows of these pigs chewing on the bars, getting incredibly frustrated with their situation because they have zero stimulation. And again, these are very intelligent. They're about as intelligent as a dog. So it's just, I don't need to tell you that it's horrible, but it's just so frustrating to see.
And it's like Roger was saying that we have to keep coming up with these more and more horrific sort of ways of treating them. Born out of the fact that that we treat the animals so abysmally in the first place. I mean, it's like baby piglets. I mean, when I first watched a baby piglet have its ears nipped off, its teeth snapped out, its tail twisted off or cut off, its testicles ripped out, all without anesthetic, and then the piglet just thrown to the side, bleeding, crying. It's absolutely horrific. Again, I mean, all these things are only necessary because we breed them in the first place unnecessarily. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to go for this level of suffering.
Just wouldn't be there, would they?
No,
Have we
not
lost
at
Danny
all.
fore do you think, Mark? I mean,
Hopefully
come
not.
back, Danny, we
Hope he
need
didn't
you.
crash.
Yeah, when I spoke to him about quarter to 7, he said he was about 40 minutes away, 40 minutes away from the hotel. So he should be there anytime now, and hopefully on a better connection to rejoin. I would think he did say he
Probably
would
got
do.
a wind up machine or something.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? He probably
Somebody
does.
mentioned goats before, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't. They're
All right,
asking,
can you see the
do
goat question,
goats go
Sheree?
through a similar process? I'm not quite sure. But I know who would, because Sandra Higgins of Go Vegan World, she went vegan on the basis of seeing a goat dairy. So if you've got any questions about goats, Sandra is perfect for that.
All right, okay, yeah, because I think I've not seen. What's Assassin say? Oh, hi, Assassin 9958. Are you doing all right there?
Can I just say one thing?
No,
Assassin,
don't time him out. Let him vent.
yeah,
You know,
that's Assassin.
well,
You keep saying we're censoring you and we're not responding, but I try to look at your comments. I'm not really see you make a point. So if you have a specific point, feel free to comment, or you can message me. Let's say on Instagram. That's usually the most practical one. So feel free to comment, but give
unfortunately
us
for
something to
Assassin,
work with.
I've tried talking to Assassin. You know, I try to like Assassin. You know, and get along and have a nice conversation. But there's only so many times you can sort of respond to the words cult, though. Objectively beneficial source of food, hypocrisy, vegan cult. I mean, you can only respond to that so many times before there's just that you're repeating yourself, and it becomes
Bit of a
completely and
violent
utterly
name as well.
frivolous. Say that again, Roger.
Bit of a violent name as well.
Definitely. Violent name for a violent person. Hey, oh, there we go. Why should I restrict myself from an objectively beneficial source? It's not like
Why
I
is it
called that
objectively
before.
beneficial? Why is it objectively beneficial, Assassin? Because there's a lot of sources that we have that show that for environmental reasons, for our health reasons, Mark can tell you all about that, and for many other reasons. It's not our biological diet, that first and foremost, but also it's not the most beneficial diet in the current time that we live in. Also, in terms of restrictions, I don't feel restricted in any way, shape, or form. I just legitimately don't want to participate in it anymore. Can you do anything with that?
That's a new one from Assassin, though. He said cope. I've never heard him say cope before. Is that a new in word? For
I heard Ellie use it before.
I think it's the thing that's coming. You know, they say, "Oh, cope," because like you can't cope with it, or you have to cope with it, or whatever. But we don't have to cope with it.
Leon, I find it worth talking about. It's especially important to address these topics because I'd much rather hear the opinions of people who actually hold these positions rather than talk about the points that vegans bring up that they have experience with, right? You don't want to put yourself into an echo chamber. And I agree, sometimes you're going to end up in an endless loop of nonsense, but I think it's still a conversation worth having.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, Assassin has mentioned the fact that we're biologically omnivores. Now, I think there's a lot of confusion about what that word means. I think people think, oh, that means 50-50, whereas, the early human tribes, they are known in social sciences now as foragers. And the thing they foraged for most was plant food. And so, although we can tolerate an amount of flesh in our diet, like most even herbivores could tolerate some, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's our biological diet in that sense of we should have a lot of it. But say it was, we're also moral agents, and so therefore we could decide to kind of get around the problem of our biological diet for moral reasons anyway. And so that's what vegans and animal rights people would do. In the say, well, okay, we don't want to commit these rights violations, so let's see if we can get around it, and that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Assassin's saying, "Give me a." I don't want to concentrate on Assassin too much because it will just be a black hole that we'll never get out of. But
Yeah, exactly.
but he says, "Give me a reason." Many people in many different channels, in comment sections, etc., have given Assassin many reasons why he shouldn't abuse animals anymore. But he doesn't want to hear them. He just wants to poke us and constantly, speak the same nonsense over and over again. You've heard why. It's not biologically required for us to consume animal flesh or stuff that comes out of animals. And you know all the science behind that. You just choose to ignore it. And it's also morally just not an acceptable thing to do, to be harming other animals for unnecessary
it's not restrictive
purposes.
either, is it? I mean, like, how many times have we all heard vegans say, "Blimey, I've got such a varied diet now that I've gone plant-based than I have ever had." So it's not restrictive. If anything, the sad diet is restrictive.
Exactly. I mean, I think before I was vegan, I used to eat obviously the stuff that came out of cows, like dairy products. I used to eat pigs, chickens, and cows, and probably fish as well. So I've given up 5 things.
I'd say it's a restriction.
Five sentient beings I've given up. But I've given 5 things that I could have possibly eaten out, and I've increased the stuff I like, other things like quinoa and it's stuff that I'd never even thought of before. There's thousands and thousands of edible plants that you can eat, and you're giving up 5 things. Is it that big a sacrifice? Come on.
I'd say it's restrictive in the same sense that it's restrictive to not eat other humans. That's technically a restriction too. So sure, if you want to say it's restrictive, fine with me. It's just it's not a very painful restriction. Yeah. And
we restrict all sorts of things that are bad for us. I mean, eating animal flesh and stuff that comes out of animals, it'll give you heart disease. It'll give you help promote certain types of cancer. And I'm not even talking about ethical things. So I don't think he cares particularly about ethical things. So there's many good reasons not to do it, but he doesn't want to hear them. So.
Well, the ironic thing is that sociologically, humans are very conservative when it comes to their diet. And that basically means that most cultures are certainly until recently, even if you go back just say to the 1960s, 70s, most cultures they focus on 7 or 8 dishes, which they kind of rotate, And when you become vegan, you break out of that restriction.
Yeah.
Ironically, it's the other way around.
It's definitely. I still. I don't know about you guys, and I obviously don't want to turn this into a sort of a dietary conversation, particularly. But if, for instance, before I was vegan, if I would eat a curry, with herbs, spices, potatoes, blah, 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 all these different things in there. I eat the same thing, but I just take out the animal flesh and maybe put in beans or tofu. I'm eating the same sorts of meals that are healthier for you. I'm not missing out on anything, getting the same flavors. What is restrictive about that? There is no restriction. It's restricting the amount of cruelty and harm I cause in the world, and that's a restriction I'm happy with, to be fair. So there we go. Anyway, I think we've talked enough about him.
There's one more thing. I'm actually kind of curious. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but he mentioned something about morality being subjective. I think morality, I'm still kind of on this topic. I'm just kind of going into it. But what do you think? Do you think morality is ultimately subjective or objective?
It's a product of rational discourse in kind of Tom Reagan's kind of way, which is that moral agents come together. Because one of the main things that Reagan said is that what we need is people of goodwill to come together in order to sort out some of the issues that are raised by our movement, feminism, and all the rest of it. And so then you come up with premises, you come up with ideas, and you test them. So morality is a rational process, which is why that's what the atheists say against the people who say you can't have morality without God. They say yes, you can, because it's a human construct. We can talk about moral ideas, we can kind of knock them around, and then get a general agreement and hopefully a consensus. Like there would be a consensus, you would argue, although there's evidence against it, that most people adhere to the idea that human beings have rights. Mm-hmm. There's a consensus about that, but not fully by any means. There's a lot of people in North America who are a bit iffy, especially about children's rights. But so that's what it's a product of rational discourse.
Okay, that's an interesting take. I haven't heard that before.
And I think if you showed most people on the planet the condition and what goes in, they would definitely say that and I've heard a lot of people say that they don't agree with the morality of it, but they sort of like still eat it because they like the taste, or they've been convinced that it's some kind of nutritional requirement to do so. But I think most people believe it's immoral to sort of harm animals, and kill them when it's absolutely not necessary. They're just not willing to make the change to stop doing it.
Usually it's a bit more nuanced than that, in the sense that most people are against animal cruelty, but that doesn't make them against animal use and slaughter. I mean, that's really Peter Singer's position.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, the movement's leading philosopher is not against slaughter, and he also thinks that other animals are replaceable. So, we don't have a rights-based movement. And I mean, my position is that if we did, the claims making that we make would be a lot stronger. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I didn't want to dive all the way into it, but it's just an interesting take. I'm looking into it. So
yeah, I think obviously one of the animals that's probably taken advantage of just as much, if not more, than any other animal on the planet for its reproductive system is obviously hens. They are. They're supposed to, I mean, I don't know if it's actually biologically accurate, but I always think of a hen's egg as sort of I sort of equate it to the same as a female human's sort of monthly sort of cycle, when they have a period, and hens are supposed to lay about 12 to 15 eggs per year if they hadn't been genetically modified or messed with or anything else. So it's about the same sort of thing, one a month, maybe a bit more, but obviously once they've been genetically altered and what everything else that's done to them, they end up laying hundreds, don't they? Which is absolutely devastating to the reproductive systems, causing them all kinds of issues and problems. They lose so many nutrients out of their own bodies to produce that level of eggs that most of them can't even walk. They can't regrow their feathers. They're in such. That's why when you see like hens from the rescue hens and all these other hens that we see, or the shots when people have gone into sort of factory farms and taken images of them, and they literally have no feathers. Most of them can't walk. They're just losing so much nutrients from their body and being so abused that it's just not possible for them to live any sort of quality of life. And plus they're all packed together in by the thousand, so even if they could walk around, they wouldn't have anywhere to walk. So I mean, it's just
the footage of those
I think the things are getting worse for the hens. I took part last summer with Back into Daylight Animal Sanctuary. We rescued 200 hens from a free-range farm. Okay. And they were in terrible, terrible condition. This was a legal rescue before anybody asked. And the thing is, when we got them back to the sanctuary, they were pumping out eggs as though there was no tomorrow. And it was almost like, and they were quite, as individuals, they were quite aggressive with each other. And it was almost like it was part of the strain, and it looked like they were a modified strain, because this was like an organic free-range farm, it was called. And they were lacking feathers. Their combs were all floppy. Some of them had been debeaked. Some of them couldn't walk too well. Some of them obviously prolapsed and died and stuff. And so it was a very difficult situation. And it was even worse than the chickens that I saw in the 1980s liberated from farms. They seemed in a worse condition, especially since these ones were supposed to be free range.
I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm sure a lot of people are in the stream do this. This is debeaking, so probably because of the cramped conditions, and obviously, as Roger was saying, so, the anger issues within the birds because of the conditions and how they're maybe you say there's some kind of genetic sort of breeding issue there as well. They actually have to completely well, they don't have to. Again, this is something that is done because of what we've done to them. This is why it's the only reason why it's required is the beak is removed, the tip, the sharp part, and then it's burnt, sealed, cauterized to stop the bleeding, all without any kind of anesthetic, and absolutely cruel as can be. But, you know, that's common practice there, isn't it? You know, to do that. I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes people think that, you know, a beak on a bird is just an inanimate piece of like non-feeling sort of bone or something, you know, but it's absolutely not. I mean, you can, they feel it, that they struggle when it's done, that they're in pain afterwards, and it's completely and utterly unnecessary. It's only born from what we're doing to them.
Yeah, that's something that really pissed me off. Sorry for the swearing, but
No, you're
that's something that
okay.
really pissed me off when
Pisses us all off.
Yeah, when I went vegan and I learned about all of these terminology things, like, okay, you know, why not backyard eggs? Why not free range eggs? And I actually pulled up the Certified Humane's article on the USDA's definition of free range. It means that birds must have outdoor access or access to the outdoors. In some cases, this can mean access only through a pup hole, with no full body access to the outdoors and no minimum space requirement. So there's no minimum space requirement. And what this often means in practice is that they just stuff them all together into one big cage rather than a bunch of separated cages.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at the filth within there as well. It's such filthy conditions.
It stinks so bad.
We think on this free range farm that we went to, the reason that a lot of them had feathers missing from their backs was that the manure had built up, which meant that the hens had more difficulty getting underneath the kind of the bars or the tubes of the feeding and the water delivery, and so they were scraping their backs against those. So as Joy says, really we talk about one big cage now rather than a load of little ones.
I'm seeing a few more of about the definitions, but it's all not very well. It's like the HFAC's free range requirement is 2 square feet per bird. Depending on the season, they are outside or not. And when they are outdoors, they must be outdoors for at least 6 hours a day, and all standards must be met. And pasture raised requirement is 1,000 birds per 2.5 acres. So that's 108 square feet per bird. And the fields must be rotated. So that's very odd.
Well, we're back to denial and ignorance again, because if anybody in the chat or the panel even, we give talks. One of the things that I used to do, I've only done it a few times, but I would give out pen and paper and ask people to draw a farm without any cues or clues, and they always drew the kind of idealized free range farm. So the hens are scratching in. There's no cages, there's only homes for the other animals, and they're in family units. It's kind of an idealized fantasy that they have in their head. And I always say this is the farm that they know, or it's the farm that they want to know.
Yeah.
And so it's 100%. Kind of willful ignorance, like Mark was saying before.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look inside, the free range farms or the ones that don't claim to be free range, they're just as bad as each other. It's literally impossible for a hen to perform any of its natural behaviors. I mean, even they're so tightly packed, they're so close together. They're so weakened by the level of abuse of their reproductive system. They can't get up. They can't scrat around in the dirt like they're supposed to do. They can't have this social I mean, I don't know exactly how many faces a chicken can remember, but definitely I don't think I could remember 10,000 people in the same room as me. But so there's no chance of having any social groups or any social interactions with any of their fellow hens there. It's just impossible. Whereas if they were in the smaller groups out in the wild naturally, they would form relationships and whatever, with other members of what's a group of hens called if they were in the wild? Does anybody know? Is it a flock of is it a flock the same as
flock? Yeah, and the young would be a clutch. Yeah.
Yeah, so none of that's possible, and it's absolutely no wonder that they can get
they do make friends and stick around with individuals, sometimes little groups. In fact, one of the things that we were frightened about last summer was the fact that we were given permission to take 200 out of 1,000.
Okay.
I think what it was that they only had a contract with the slaughterhouse for 800 individuals, and so they had 200 more than they could take to the slaughterhouse. And so they thought that they'd palm them off on a sanctuary, which in effect they kind of did. So but basically what that meant is they got more involved than they had a slaughter contract for, because that means that they were getting the eggs from the extra 200 as well. And then they had well, what do we do with the 200? I know, we'll give them to a sanctuary.
I think hens are the same as other animals as well. When they do naturally have offspring, that they would look after them and nurture them, and they'd stay close for a while until they were larger. But obviously they take them away, and I think one thing that we need to touch on obviously is the male chicks. I mean, I think we're probably, anyone who's vegan or looked into it knows what happens to male chicks in the egg industry. They obviously don't lay eggs, so absolutely not profitable at all. So like Roger said before, we've invented a nice system to deal with the problem that we've caused, and that's to kill them all in multiple different varying ways. I believe sometimes they're just thrown in trash bags to forget and die. Sometimes they're put in macerators just to be mashed up, and sometimes I believe they gas them as well. Is that right, Roger? And
yeah, they could be using a kind of like a grinder, which is kind of gas powered, or like you say, just thrown into a plastic bag, and then they just suffocate each other. And then when the bag is full, they just close the top as though they're a bin bag, that kind of thing. And then, as you said, the macerator. The interesting thing about that, of course, is that the RSPCA would often recommend the macerator, and you can see probably that the macerator from the RSPCA's point of view is better, and I'm using that in bunny rabbit ears, better than just being thrown into a plastic bag, in the sense that you've got beings who are just born and probably not that aware of what's going on, and then they're just killed outright. And it is pretty instant when they go into these things. I mean, it's an horrendous, swirl of kind of, blades and stuff. But it is pretty instant from a welfare point of view. Compared with
welfareists would probably agree with that as a perfectly sort of acceptable thing to do, because obviously it's the minimal amount.
Well, maybe not. It's just that it's a question with welfare, as usual. It's kind of which is the best of a bad thing,
But it's certainly not a good thing. Joy, were you going to say something then?
Yeah, I can understand to an extent why welfarist organizations would want to do the best they can in order to operate within what is currently legal and the field in which they are working. But I'm really missing their incentive to try and, to try and first and foremost vouch for welfarism, but then move on to abolitionism. And that's something that I really miss in welfarist organizations. Well, it seems like they're satisfied with
they never moved to the abolition point of view, did they? Though is that not that I've seen either. Have you seen any sort of welfarist organisations that have transitioned into sort of more of an abolitionist sort of standpoint, Roger?
Well, if you take a group like Compassion in World Farming, they would say they're abolitionists when it comes to barren battery cages. But in terms of their general thing, I mean, Compassion in World Farming, it's a British organisation. It was started in 1967 by a dairy farmer. And so it was never an abolitionist thing. But the point is, there's a lot of confusion between why don't the welfares move into a rights position or a liberation position. It's not what they're set up to do.
No, definitely not.
What they're trying to do is take out the cruelty from the use, whereas a rights position, a liberation position, is to end the use. It's a completely different aim. They're not aiming to do the same thing.
And yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, with the chicks and stuff, it is the quicker way. But I think we can all agree that it's only necessary for billions of chicks to die in that manner because of what we've done.
It's a right. I mean, bottom line for us, it's a rights violation, no matter how they do it.
Exactly.
And so you might have different levels of cruelty. And you can argue as long as you want until the cows come home. Can we say that? We can argue about levels of cruelty. The bottom line is the fundamental wrong is the fact that they're violating the rights, regardless of how much kind of humane stuff they bring in and welfare stuff they bring in.
If somebody was to ask me, would you prefer to have 6 years of absolute abhorrent torture and absolute misery, and then us kill you, or we could just kill you now. Then I would choose to be killed now. But really, I'd choose not to have either of those and just live my long, happy life. And I think that's the thing. I mean, yeah, it's the lesser of those two evils, but it's not the only choice.
No, well, I mean, that goes back to one of the things I think that Danny brought up. It's really interesting, you know. Like,
you spoke his name and he arrived.
Oh yeah, look at
You
that.
summoned him.
The power. Come on, Danny. You got this down?
I'm back in the hotel now. But
Did you
He's
stop?
still traveling. He's still traveling.
He's still going, isn't he?
He's always on the move.
Yeah, one thing that would shock vegetarians is when they realized that if you've got something like a dairy light meat eater and you've got a dairy heavy vegetarian, then because of the length of time that dairy animals are exploited, then they're creating more animal suffering than the meat eater. And it comes as a big shock to the vegetarians. You know, if you've got ones that are really into the cheese and the moussaka and all the rest of it and all that, and the cheese pizzas, the level of suffering they're creating is much worse than a meat eater.
Yeah, 100%. And it's hard for them to get their heads around that, isn't it? Because a lot of the time, vegetarianism is seen as they'll convince themselves that no animals suffer, no animals die, you know, and everything's sort of idyllic, and they're just living a happy life for the products that they're consuming. But it like you say there, Roger, it's probably the most suffering in these industries is through the prolonged torture for things that come out of animals and not just their lives.
Yeah, somebody says most cheeses are not even vegetarian anyway. It's interesting because that's a reference to rennet.
Yeah,
but hardly anybody talks about that anymore. You never see conversations about rennet anymore.
Rennet is something that's taken from is it from a calf's stomach?
Yeah, calf's stomach,
which is used which is used in the production of cheese to separate. Is it for separating the curds and whey? Is that right?
It could be. I've never seen the process, but it's obviously something to do with the process. But I mean, who came up with that idea? Well, all we need to do is throw a calf stomach in here to
it always amazes me how humans even think of it, how we come up with these horrific things. You know, it's absolutely just very strange indeed. But so is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about generally about you know, mothers that have been abused in animal agriculture industries, and sort of anything that we've not spoke about that you'd like to speak about?
Well, do you have anything to mention, Roger? Because I can go after you.
No, I've got something, but you go ahead, Joy.
Okay, because one thing that I very often miss in vegan activism, and of course I'm going to be the one to bring this up, but bees. Queen bees are also artificially inseminated. They're also limited in their movement. Lots of people think that, you know, you cannot exploit bees because if they don't like you, they'll just fly away. The queen is often either restricted in the nest, either the wings are clipped or they have a gauze that goes over the nest so that the queen cannot leave, but it's just big enough for the worker bees to get in and out. So that is also definitely a group of animals that is abused by the masses. And you know, I often talk about the environmental impact, but I also have good reason to assume that bees in fact do feel and experience suffering. So yeah, that's definitely also a topic I would like
because you spoke about this on length on your channel as well, haven't you, Joy? So you've got some videos about bees and their sentience and other such things on there and how they're treated. So anyone who's not watching on Joy's channel, go watch it.
But how do you like? What was your thought? Like when you guys went vegan, what was your thought on honey? Did you consider it first and foremost? Did you have that little moment where you were like, "Huh, is that actually vegan?" Because I did.
Yeah, and initially, I didn't particularly consume honey anyway. But you know, if there was products with honey in initially, I didn't quite realize that there was harm in it, but it didn't take me long to realize there is, and obviously I've not consumed that since then, since I found out all the information about that. But I think a lot of people do see it as a victim-free sort of product, don't they? They can't really see why. Yeah, they think, oh well, it's the same with the cows' milk. They think, oh, cows make milk anyway, so we might as well take it. And they think the same about bees and their honey. They think, oh well, they're making it anyway, so we might as well take it. I mean,
And backyard eggs. That's one of the main ones, isn't it? That they would say.
exactly. I mean. That again, like Roger says, with the eggs, oh well, they're laying them anyway. We might as well eat them, but they only lay that huge amount of eggs because of what we've genetically manipulated them into doing so. And I think I spoke at length because we were going to rescue some chickens at one point, and I did say that if we were to rescue chickens, there wouldn't be any degree of backyard eggs because we would be well, obviously I wouldn't consume them anyway, but we would try to get the hens that we rescued the implant, so that would stop them ovulating and stop the egg production, causing them to have a lot better health and a lot better life, which is the way I think anyone who's rescuing hens, if you should hopefully make yourself allocate some money to do that, in my opinion.
Talking about bees, Joy, I've got an interview. I've done several interviews with a radio journalist in Ireland called Jerry Kelly, and he used to keep bees. And so he was saying, is honey vegan? And I said no. And I said that there's usually, at least back in the 80s onwards, there was two arguments against bees. The first one was with the small hives, the deconstruction of them and then putting them back together again would always kill a number of bees. And I said to him, "Is that what happened?" And he said it was unavoidable. So he as an ex-beekeeper was saying, you just can't help doing it, even on that small scale. In terms of the large scale and the small scale as well, is that they replace the honey with like a sugar solution, don't they? Mm. And the argument there is that the honey is more nutritious. So some of the weaker bees who would have survived by consuming honey die because they've got an inadequate substitute.
That's entirely true. It's also just not a very good long-term solution, which is often used in the honey or in the pollination industry, for which these bees are used, because they will often gas or otherwise kill the hives. That some of them do let them overwinter, but a lot of them don't. They just gas the hives until all the animals are dead, because it's not profitable to keep bees overwinter. At least that's what I've understood.
What's your? I don't want to kind of ask too many questions, but Joy, what's your take about the almond argument and all this thing about transporting bees around North America and all that kind of stuff, California nuts and all this kind of stuff?
I'm so glad you asked. This is such a fascinating subject. I cannot give you an absolute definitive answer to that yet. I'm still looking into it. But yeah, almonds, one of the main problems with almond crops is that it's a monocrop, and it really, takes out the all of the nutrition out of the earth, basically. It's not a very sustainable crop. I do try to avoid it because it's also very exploitative in the sense that, like you say, we transport a whole bunch of bees in order to get them there. Oh, there he is. But the problem that I have with transporting bees, first and foremost, the most commonly used bee that we have for the honey and the pollination industry is the Apis mellifera. This is only one out of 20,000 different species of bees. These are not endangered. And these are actually very invasive. Like, especially if we look at North America, this is an invasive species. So it will greatly affect, if we put a bunch of these bees in that area, this will greatly affect the biodiversity of that place. Yeah, and basically what it does, it's very disorienting for the bees. It is not very good for the bees to be moved around a whole bunch. That's not part of their natural lifespan. It's a huge stressor on them. And aside from that, it spreads disease. There's a huge problem at the moment with bees catching all sorts of parasites, viruses, and other, infectious diseases. And this obviously spreads. If you put a bunch of hives together and you put them on a truck and you move them, they're going to get infected and they're going to go extinct. And not only does this hurt the bees themselves, they're going to spread this to other wildlife, once again affecting the ecosystems. But I could talk about this for literal hours, so I'll stop.
Your channel is invaluable from a vegan point of view. Everybody should subscribe to it, but also share it, because you're quite low on subscribers. I noticed. We need to get your channel up there. Bigger than Earthling Ed or something like that,
Yeah, if we could
That's
transfer
flattering.
if we could transfer subscribers from Dan's, just unsubscribe from Dan and all go to Joy, that would be the best way. No, I'm kidding.
I got like three.
Dan does fantastic stuff. I'm only kidding.
I really need to get
So-
to the almond video. I've got like 3 videos on bees lined up at the moment, but I really need to get to that almond video. Dan was actually the one who brought me to the idea to make a video about that, right? You sent me an article about it.
That's right, yeah, and we talked about the almond crops in America, how the almond crops supposedly they've got this symbiotic relationship with the almond farmers now, and all these bees wouldn't survive without the almond crops, and the almond crops wouldn't survive without the bees, and it's a crazy situation that we've got ourselves into.
I mean, I used to drink almond milk and eat almonds, etc. And to be fair, I mean, I didn't think too much about it because you just think to yourself, it's a plant, like it's a nut. What harm can it do?
Yeah, but you can get bee-friendly almonds, Mark.
You can do, but what I did, because I wasn't sure which products were and which ones weren't, I knocked it on the head. One of the reasons I knocked it on the head was because I couldn't be bothered looking into which ones were sourced, so I just knocked them all on the head. And the other thing is, I just got sick of people saying, "Well, as a vegan, you just don't care about almonds and bees, do you?" So I said, "Well,
Yeah.
I'll stop eating almonds, and it's not that big a deal. There's other alternatives."
It's very low
And it's
down,
not
isn't
just
it?
almonds, by the way, that's harmful to bees. Like any mass crop, anything that requires, mass pollination with bees is just, I try to avoid almonds as well. I gotta admit, it's harder than going vegan, avoiding almonds. It's a bit like avoiding Nestle. It's so hard.
Oh yeah, everybody should avoid Nestle. But in terms of surveys that have been done amongst vegans, I think that almond milk doesn't come up very high in terms of preference anyway.
No, I don't think it does.
Yeah,
I think oat milk's the big one at the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So Dan, you're here. You're lying in your bed. I hope you're wearing pants. And what have you been up to?
Thank you for confirming.
Well, I've just spent five quid to get the ultimate Wi-Fi. So what Premier Inn do is they give you really shit Wi-Fi in the hopes that you spend £5 on the upgraded Wi-Fi, and it's
looks like they got that model right then, because you spent it.
So
yeah,
close it down now, Mark. So he's wasted his money.
Oh, great idea.
It wouldn't bother me in the slightest. But what
tired,
I missed, I mean, what have you no, because I'm used to driving all day, aren't I?
Oh, of course you are.
It's not a big deal, but yeah, I am a bit worn out. But I think a nice glass of vegan red wine will go down a treat before I go to bed tonight. But yeah, I'm up early in the morning and I'm up to shenanigans down here, and then I'm coming home tomorrow afternoon. So it's all good, but all in the cause of the animals, definitely. But yeah, what have you talked about? Have you talked about chickens? Have you talked about
Yeah, well, we spoke about cows and chickens, and we've also spoke briefly about pigs, obviously, and Joy brought up the bee situation, obviously, as well. Obviously, there's many other animals that we take advantage of, many mothers that we take advantage of in the animal agriculture, which we've not spoken about. But obviously, it's that would go on forever if we wanted to discuss every single amount of abuse.
That was the point that I was going to make in terms of my final thing, is that if you think about outside of agriculture, you think about puppy mills, think about greyhound racing, horse racing, even crufts, all of that involves the exploitation of female reproduction.
Pet industry.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd take all day to list it all.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the white gold that I was talking about previously, it's like the race horses. When a horse goes to stud, that horse increases in value, not because it's a brilliant individual, but because it produces quality sperm that sires beautiful, fast horses. It's very corrupt, and no matter which way you look at it, it's not a nice way to treat animals. It's like products and like stocks and shares. I mean, I asked about the chickens because that is a really gruesome sort of
situation that chickens find themselves in as far as mating is concerned. Because, I mean, I know animals haven't got any sort of moral guidelines when it comes to breeding, but they do have sort of, if you excuse the pun, a pecking order. I mean, when birds are in the natural environment, the cockerel can only sort of find a hen that is sort of like up for it, basically, to use a common terminology.
Yeah, well, birds have some beautiful mating rituals. You know, I've watched, you know, amazing some rituals that birds have. Absolutely fascinating in their natural environment.
Yeah, and so what happens in these sort of big, massive sheds with 30, 40,000 birds in is they literally throw a rapist in amongst the women, and that is basically what happens. And they've got no means of escape. And it's a terrible situation. There's no courting ritual. There's nothing. They just throw a rampant male bang in the middle of a lot of females and let him do his stuff. And it's horrible. It's horrible. They're violent. And it's not a natural thing at all. And people think, well, animals do this sort of thing naturally. It comes naturally. But yeah, it happens in nature as an event. Like you said, they have a mating ritual. If a hen's not ready, she'll run away. She's got a chance to run away. But these poor individuals haven't got the capacity to run away. They can't run away. They can't run away from the male, and it's horrible. It's like if it was in a human context, it'd be a worse nightmare.
Yeah, but also, these male hens, not to be the one like, oh, but the males too, but the males are also in just awful conditions. It's just the entire commodification of animals that's just, you see them completely plucked of their feathers and bloody and with their paws cut off to the point where they cannot scratch anymore. Infection. It's just awful. It's just awful in general.
And this is the reason that a lot of the stuff goes on, like the debeaking and everything. It is when animals are in these confined spaces or any situation where they're not in the natural environment, they behave differently. So then the torture comes with having to adapt those animals.
Yeah, that's what Roger was saying. We've invented all these horrific things to compensate and allow the other horrific things that we want to happen as profitably as possible.
I mean, I think a vicious circle is like exactly what it is. It's a horrible vicious cycle that we've created. And again, I mean, people don't even realize that queen bees are sexually exploited. They're actually artificially inseminated sometimes. It's like,
what Joy was saying there.
Yeah.
I was going to say to David's question there, I'm streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I think Dan's doing the same. I'm not sure. Roger and Joy, are you guys just streaming on YouTube or
YouTube?
YouTube, yeah.
At least YouTube. I don't believe I have my Facebook set up. So if you're not seeing it on Facebook, then it's not there. Then it didn't work.
Well, I think we'll probably mention that again while we're doing it. Dan and me were playing with Restream, and we were just saying that this will be, and we wanted to sort of give it a test. Really, we were going to have a chat about the subjects anyway, but we thought it would be really good if we could sort of put the stream in as many places as possible. While we're discussing important things like this, to get as much coverage as possible, and obviously. If we were doing anything in the future, such as fundraisers or anything else, or bringing awareness about a particular event, being able to go out to 10 guests and like 3 or 4 or 5 platforms on each one of those guests, you can get a hell of a lot of coverage out there and get the word out a lot more. So we just really wanted to give it a go, didn't we, Dan, and see how it worked.
I mean, I can't see the chat from here. It's way too small on my phone. But maybe, why don't we give a shout out and just see who is watching from whose platform? So if you're out there, if you're watching from mine, put GVG, YouTube, YT, or Facebook or Twitter, and let's see who's watching from what and
Yeah,
what
see what platform and whose channels you're on there. Dan obviously is doing this because he wants to be the winner and he wants to have the most. He's fooling absolutely nobody. Look at the smile. He knows what he's doing here.
It's not who likes me. I'm not playing who likes me. I'm just interested to see where all the people are coming on from.
No, I get you. It's but yeah, it seems good and it could be very useful moving forward. I think. I mean, what do you think, Roger? Do you think something like that would be handy in certain situations?
You mean the restream thing?
Yeah, being able to have because I can have, say, for instance, 10 guests. I can start a stream. 10 guests can be on the stream, and each one of those can then restream to multiple platforms.
Yeah.
So you can get
have you got the paid one? Have you?
Yeah. I paid for it. It's about £14 a month, and then you can sort of like put your own branding, and you can get
about
more
the same
people.
as Netflix. So.
Yeah, about the same as Netflix, but I'd say a bit more useful.
yeah.
Better use of my time.
I'm getting quite a few off Facebook, actually. That's really surprising because I never stream on Facebook. So I find that really interesting that people are watching this on Facebook as well.
Yeah, well, they were trying Facebook to get away from you, but it didn't work for them.
I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere.
He's prolific. Got to give him that. But did you any of you guys manage off topic a bit? Well, not really off topic. I don't suppose it's on topic. Did you watch the new Milked documentary?
No, I've not watched it yet.
No.
Well, in that case, that conversation's dead in the water.
Maybe we could.
Anybody seen that Bad Vegan thing? Because I haven't either.
No, I haven't watched Bad Vegan.
Yeah, I've watched that. That's really interesting, and it's not a vegan documentary though. It's not about that. It's something completely different. So I won't do any spoilers.
I know the premise of it, but as Dan says, I don't think it's particularly about veganism. It's
far from it.
Far from it, really. But it won't stop people probably using it against us in some way.
just shooting this out there. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. We're first going to have to look at copyright stuff and whether or not this is allowed. But maybe we could do a stream together where we watch Milked.
Yeah, that would be good. Would you be up for that, guys?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think there'll be any copyright issues because what's it out on? What's the actual platform it's officially out on?
It was on YouTube that I watched it.
Is it on YouTube or is it on another platform and someone's uploaded it to YouTube?
I watched it on YouTube because it's from Plant Based News, isn't it?
Right.
Who were airing the premiere that I watched anyway.
So they've done the same. I don't think there's any vegan documentaries that are adverse to other vegans sharing out because the whole point of it's not a money-making exercise, is it? I mean, Seaspiracy wasn't a money-making exercise. It was about bringing awareness. And
but YouTube doesn't always acknowledge that. Like there are some websites that very explicitly say, hey, I want you to spread this as much as possible and I want you to watch this. And for legal reasons, that's kind of important to have them clarify that because otherwise we might get into trouble for streaming it.
No, we could look into it. We could look into it. I mean, and see if that's a possibility. And if so, I mean, maybe we could do that. That sounds a good idea to me.
Like Dominion did. Dominion, Michael mentioned it. Dominion has specifically on their website, like, hey, we want everyone to watch this as much as possible. You have permission to view it anywhere. So that kind of explicit permission is important.
Going back to Restream, Danny and I are hoping to do a series in the coming months with Ronnie Lee, who was originally going to be on this, because Ronnie is 50 years vegan this year. Because I was going to make the joke that if we join together, me and Ronnie, that's 4 years of veganism. But
that's fantastic.
We're going to do a little kind of thing, celebrating his kind of time. It was 1972 when he went vegan.
Wow.
1972, that's when I was born.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, in that case, you were 7 when I went vegan then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was 5 in 1972.
I was not born. No.
You were never a child. Were you, Grumpy?
He's always been a child.
They used white gold with me to breed me. White gold.
No.
God, no. Let's not go there.
No, but
50, like you've paved the way, basically. If you've been vegan for 50 years, you've had to live off rice and beans for a long time, I imagine.
Well, actually, funny enough, a lot of people say, "Oh, it was terrible back there," but it kind of wasn't that much. The real pioneers were the ones who started the vegan social movement, and that's 1944, and that was the Second World War was still going on. It was just winding down, the Second World War, but they kind of declared peace, during this conflict, and they were the real pioneers because some of them were conscientious objectors, so that meant that they had their benefits cut and everything as well. And so a lot of it was to do with Dig for Britain and kind of growing their own stuff.
I think Roger's been a little bit modest here because Roger and Ronnie both spent time in prison for their beliefs as well. They were vegan political prisoners. So yeah.
I was going to introduce Roger as a jailbird.
Roger was the one who always dropped the soap. Oh, look out. Here we go.
I'm not commenting.
When
does the premium Wi-Fi run out?
Yeah, Ronnie and I were in a cell at one point, and when we were on remand, and we were both press officers for the organisation, and he used to tell everybody that I had a cardboard phone in my cell, and I kept answering it and go, ALF, and which wasn't true, but he convinced loads of people that was a real thing.
I think the good thing about this Restream application, because I don't know, I think Roger, don't you use StreamYard for your stream? Dan noticed quite an interesting thing about this is on the StreamYard platform, if more than one person speaking, it tends to cut out.
Yeah,
the volume.
But he doesn't do it now. He doesn't. We can talk over each other. It's great, and it's superb for me because I love talking over people.
But on this one, it doesn't have that thing where it dips other people's voices out. So that's probably a good thing. And there is a free version as well, Roger. So
we did use Restream once for the Animal Rights Show, and I think it's really improved since then. It must have been about maybe 9 months ago, and so I think we might try it again because it was a bit limited then. It wasn't as good as Restream for various reasons, but it looks, from what you've been doing, it looks better.
It seems
but
good.
Was that the paid version, Roger? That's the question. Was it the paid version?
No, it wasn't. No.
Right, there you go.
The free version is the same though, Dan. The only thing you have to deal with the assassin. Just be quiet. Come on, terrorists. Oh my god. So yeah, you have to deal with the Restream logo, and you have to deal with the not be able to put backgrounds on, and a few other limitations. But I think its core functionality is pretty much the same though. So
is Assassin on? Is Assassin the troll on?
He's on. He's here.
No, he's been on for a while.
He's here.
Oh, Assassin.
Say hi, Dan.
I love you, Assassin. I love you. You do us a great favor as vegans because you show how dumb meat eaters are. You really do, mate. Thank you. Everything you do for veganism. I love you.
So I think we've been on a while now. So I think we should probably start wrapping up unless if that's okay with you guys. So should we go around if anyone's got any sort of closing things they want to say? Should we start with you, Joy?
Oh, sorry, I was reading comments. I was not paying attention. What?
Go to the back of the class.
Well, I did that before, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not repeating, Joy. You have to just now think of what I said.
I think you said something along the lines of
closing thoughts. Final thoughts.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me again. It's always so much fun to, go over these subjects with you guys. It's so great to get some feedback and some other interesting ideas. It's also a huge motivator to make new content. So I just want to wish you all a very happy Mother's Day. I don't exactly know when it's going to be in the UK. Is it today or was it
today?
Today. Okay. Very happy Mother's Day to Cherie and to all the other mothers out there. Take your time to take it into consideration. Take the other mothers of other species into consideration.
Do you want to tell us your platform? Your channel is called Level Joy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called Level Joy. I got a YouTube and a TikTok account on which I'm mainly active. I also have an Instagram, all under the name of Level Joy. I mainly talk about bees. I also talk about legal stuff related to veganism, and I also make music.
Very good music.
Very good music.
Roger.
Yes. Well, I would say as a closing gambit, I suppose, is that our number one target, as ever, is cultural. It's cultural speciesism. And in terms of the rights violations that go on within cultural speciesism, the exploitation of female reproduction systems is absolutely integral to it. In fact, some feminists have argued that that sometimes the movement focuses too much on kind of male chicks and veal and everything, whereas the females kind of get a real bad do out of it, which is what Danny said right at the beginning before he went on his little holiday. And so that's our number one target, cultural speciesism. We need to change that, and we need to bring about what the pioneers of our movement wanted, which was a cultural revolution, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you made a valid point there that the female reproductive system in animal agriculture is the main. It's a main thing, isn't it? It's one of the main things that occurs. I mean, it makes so many other things possible. So I think
the males are killed early on, which obviously is a rights violation, but they don't have the months and months and months, and sometimes years.
The females suffer most of the suffering.
Yeah.
Dan?
It's the shed end of the turret rather than the shed end of the stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined on all the platforms and taken the time to comment and listen to us all. I'm sorry I did this last minute, John. I'm not on a holiday, Roger. I don't know why you think I'm on holiday. I am doing something very important, and it will come out in the wash as usual.
I was only joshing, Dan. I was only joshing.
It's okay, mate. I understand. You know what I mean? I'll take it.
At the same time,
when I come to Ireland, I will be coming seeing you, and I will be. I don't know what I'll do to you yet. I might just shave your head.
If you were really committed, Dan,
I'll be in Spain if you come to Ireland.
I'll be shaving Roger's head when I see him next. But what I want to say is, I've just had a little idea, and I think we should try and push it for this time next year, for Mother's Day next year or the day before. And I've just coined this, and I think it's great because I've made it up, but I think it's a cool idea. And Joy said it. Other Mother's Day. I think we should have.
Joy said it, did you?
I think we should have an other Mother's Day, same time roundabout thing, and highlight the mothers in the farming industry and in all animal agricultural industries. I think it's a really cool idea, and I think we should. And I think we should all get it. Other Mother's Day. I think we should do it next year and really push it.
Sounds an idea. So anyway, and I'm Mark. I'm from the Vegan Mooncat, and yeah, thanks to everyone for coming. Like Dan said, I really appreciate it on all the different platforms, and yeah, be nice to your own mothers and be nice to everyone else's mothers as well. And I'll see you all guys next time.
Peace.